Hi guys, welcome back to Hell Hath No Fury, the podcast where we do selective research into things we find interesting and female-centric and give them the attention they rightfully deserve. I'm Kay and this is Elle.
Thanks for that dractacular introduction, Kate. This week, we delve into one of everyone's favourite mythical monsters. Before sparkles and sunlight, the world knew the true fear of blood-sucking fiends lurking in the dark, ready to munch on whichever human took their fancy. Not all creatures of the night live in infamy, and here are some vampiric vixens we think ought not to be lost to time.
I just want to call out that a grave error was made last week. I'm not sure that any of you will notice, but we certainly did. Right after we unplugged the mics, turned off the recording software, we realised we forgot the lucky dip. So you must have been in such suspense all week waiting to see what we talk about, all three of you.
Yeah, I can just imagine the general outcry on the internet, you know.
Three small voices.
Hey, we appreciate
Them.
those three small voices.
Yeah, we do, absolutely. So we fired her up right after the episode anyway, and it gave us the fascinating topic to research for this week of vampires. And this is an amazing topic. I had a great week researching it. How did you find it?
To be fair, I knew who I was going to do
Oh, yeah.
straight away. I did have a look at a few others because there were some really sort of quirky stories from within the UK, but they didn't really have enough meat to them, to be honest.
Yeah.
It was kind of cut and dry. This person was a bit of a psycho, thought they were a vampire. They weren't, they were just, on crack. So I went totally classic, traditional. Everyone's going to have heard of who I actually have to speak
Oh,
about
yeah.
today. Yeah.
Oh, great. Mine, I thought I was going to maybe do something like that because I think, June, you probably already know the story. You know Richard Chase? I'm
No.
pretty sure it's Richard Chase. Let me just Google that real quick before I give out some false info.
I can't say I've heard of it.
So I didn't end up doing him anyway. I think, yeah. So yeah, he's known as, his nickname was the Vampire of Sacramento. So he
Oh,
was,
yes. Of
yeah,
course.
the American serial killer, killed 6 people, rapist, cannibal, necrophile, horrible bastard overall. He obviously thought that he was a vampire, and I was gonna do maybe something like that from like just more this side of the world. But then I I went a lot more traditional with my story, and it was a small story, so I figured why not just compile the small stories. So I have a few ones to talk about. I don't have one very big one, but I've got one very interesting one that is right up our alley.
Oh, I love that. No, that's great. I mean, it's not like we have to stick to this structure of little story, big story. We just
Yeah, because our little story, big story is never little story, big story anyway.
exactly,
It's
exactly.
too big story.
I mean, my fear every week is that because we don't tell each other, this is just
That was just
raw
the same one.
reaction. My fear is always that we're going to do the same one, and we're going to sit down and be like, oh yeah, so this week I'm doing, for example, this week I'm doing the blood Countess. Then you'd be like,
Oh
oh, me
shit.
too. But fortunately, our brains aren't quite that in sync yet.
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 Alrighty, do you want
So,
to kick us off?
yeah, let's get started. So without further ado, my bloodthirsty babe this week is rather notorious, as I have said, and I would be very surprised if people were hearing her name for the first time listening today. I could have gone more obscure, but sometimes a comfortable classic is the best option.
Ah, yeah.
So, Countess Elizabeth Bathory was born in 1560 in the Kingdom of Hungary to Baron George Bathory VI and Baroness Anna Bathory. Whilst her blood may have been royal, with links to nobles throughout Europe, apparently it was the blood of young female women that Lizzie thirsted for.
Oh my god! Oh my god, you're gonna know why I'm saying oh my god in about 20 minutes.
Oh
Go ahead
god,
anyway.
okay, oh I'm excited.
Oh, keep going.
Oh, the distraction, okay.
Sorry.
So being born into a life of wealth and privilege meant Elizabeth was well educated and well endowed financially. However, it appears she was exposed to much throughout her childhood that could account for her sadistic tendencies later in life. Whilst much of it may have been hearsay, sparks of rumours fanned by her infamy over the centuries, it is said that she was encouraged to practice Satanism and witchcraft from a young age. Apparently, she spent a lot of time with her aunt, who was a practicing witch, and her uncle, who was a Satan worshipping alchemist, which probably just means that they weren't Christian. So she also witnessed brutal and severe punishments by her family's officers. Of course, back then it wasn't unusual to physically assault, punish servants, people who were deemed to be sort of in a lesser position, and apparently in the Bathory household it was pretty brutal, and she was exposed to a lot of that. In addition, this is my favourite part. Sounds a bit weird to say it's my favourite part, but whatever. As a child, she actually suffered from seizures, which people believe was probably due to epilepsy. Of course, at the time, medical advancement wasn't really a thing. So a treatment for seizures was to rub the blood of a non-sufferer onto the lips of the epileptic, the person having the seizures, as if,
And
it was like healthy blood.
Was this like, is this something that you, like, did you research this technique? Is this a real thing, or is this as a story? Is this a fate?
This is part of the story. I haven't actually done my whole homework into whether it was a thing, but I would thoroughly believe it.
Yeah, same, to be
Because
fair.
it's all about,
Yeah. Bleeding.
the whole thing with the leeches and the cleansing of the blood and stuff. It's like, oh,
Yeah.
you're unhealthy, we're gonna give you... And I find this very interesting as well, because of course in Dracula, part of what Van Helsing does is a whole blood cleansing... What's the word? Procedure, we'll say. Yeah, it's like a transfusion. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's like healthy blood given to Lucy, I believe it was. It's been a long time since I've read Dracula. But yeah, like the healthy blood administered to Lucy when she's being bitten to like cleanse her. And it's a very similar thing. This girl's having these seizures. All right, let's give her blood of healthy people to cure her. So I found that a very interesting parallel, you could say. And, who knows? Is this what gave her taste for human blood? I mean, if you're being fed it from being a child, you might get a
And
taste
told that
for
it's
it.
making you well.
Exactly.
Like, yeah.
Exactly. So, of course, I'll not get ahead of myself.
Sorry,
Yeah.
please continue. Yeah.
But yes, so...
Sorry, I'm so excited.
I know, we always do this. So... she was married in 1675, I believe, to a very high-ranking nobleman within Hungary, and over the years she bore him 5 children, and she actually managed the affairs of his estate while he was away at war. Of course, this was during the time of the Ottoman Empire. They're in Hungary, they're on the way to Vienna, they're like, en route, huge route, he's constantly away at war. So she's like managing everything while he's away. As you do. Again, important thing for us to consider for later. So it could be easy to think that she was just simply a regular European noblewoman, if it not for the scores of young girls who disappeared within the castle walls. Not quite so common, really. At least as far as we're aware. So arguments have been made, with her husband being away for such long periods of time, fighting against the Ottomans. Bathory simply got bored and began inflicting cruel punishments upon her staff. As you do. But, as I've already said, it wasn't unusual for the time for physical punishment to be brought upon servants, but she definitely took things to a whole new level when she began to imprison and torture young girls. Apparently it was said her first victims, when she first started doing this, were between the ages of 10 and 14, which is just... sick,
Jesus Christ.
Because, when we think of sort of like young women nowadays, we think of probably people like us, or, like at least 20 onwards.
Yeah.
But, back then, it'd be expected for us to have had 5 kids by now. So, apparently, the whole saga and obsession with the blood of young women began when she was punishing this young female servant girl, and some splashes of blood landed upon Bathory. And she apparently noticed the skin seemed to tighten where the blood had landed on her. You know what I mean? It's a shame that they didn't have
Right.
night cream in those days because it could have saved her a hell of a lot of bother. Because she thought, this is it. This is the trick to eternal beauty. I've got it.
Rejuvenation.
Yeah, blood is life. Apparently, she started out with just, sort of young peasant girls from the village, but her appetite soon outgrew the sort of area surrounding the castle, sort of local subjects. So she began to imprison the daughters of lesser gentry who were sent to the castle, the way that young girls were in those days for numerous reasons. And she began to bathe in their blood. So apparently she would torture these girls in numerous different ways. There have been apparently testimony of burning them with hot tongs and then immediately submerging them into icy water, burning them. Apparently there were reports of girls being burnt alive. And she actually developed her own torture weapon. This was known. We all know of the Iron Maiden, right? The huge cast with the spikes and you close it and it hurts. It hurts. That was a bit of an understatement. She apparently. Ow! Oh look, I've been impaled. Yeah, she apparently developed the Iron Virgin, which was moulded more for a feminine shape.
Okay.
And
Sorry,
more...
not where I went with it.
Yeah.
Sorry. Wow.
I'll just slide on past that one.
Yeah. Please.
And purposely fitted with blades to obviously hurt. I really can't think of
Hurt again.
Yeah, to hurt.
Probably to best get the most fruitful areas.
Yeah, like the most ergonomic
sever...
design, I suppose you could say.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Severed the most important arteries and veins to get the most exsanguination.
Oh, what a good word. Yes, that. What Kate just said. Mm-hmm. So yeah, and particularly obviously young girls because she wanted virgins because we all want that. Well, I don't know why I said we all want that.
Do we? Do we, Elle? Do we? I just want the blood of a virgin.
Look, right, I told you my brain is still not quite at full capacity yet.
It's been a long week, but I don't think the blood of a virgin's gonna help.
Virginity is a man-made construct anyway; it doesn't even exist. So yeah, these were acts that she engaged in between 1590 and 1610. So it's 20-odd years she was murdering girls, torturing and murdering girls. It is alleged that up to 650 women and girls fell victim to Bathory's bloody and sadistic exploits.
Jesus.
Yeah, right.
Do we know how old she was at that stage?
She will have been... When was she born? She was born in 1560. So this was between the ages of 30 and 50.
Shit.
Yeah.
You and I have to get a move on.
I know, right?
We've only got a year left.
I need that eternal youth.
Our youth is only going to last another year.
Oh, jeez. I mean, we do have things that Elizabeth didn't. We haven't been married since we were 2, and we don't have numerous children, and our significant others, not that I have one, aren't away at war. So now, apparently, we are aware of this shockingly high number due to a diary that Bathory kept in which she wrote each victim's name.
Just their name. Just their name, nothing else, nothing about the details.
As far as I'm aware, it was a diary that had the names in. I'm not really... Because again... Not sure how true this is. It was a very long time ago. More to say on that in a moment. So yeah.
Fucking hell, she needed a spreadsheet.
Oh, if girl had Excel, that would change her life.
It is a game changer.
Kay's sitting there absolutely heartbroken for this poor girl, having to write it all down by hand. No formula, nothing.
The poor thing.
Such a heart.
She couldn't even format that bitch.
So yeah, there were I've spoken about obviously the way that she would torture these girls, the Iron Virgin that she created. And so it's also alleged that not only did she bathe in the blood of her victims to tighten up the old skin, she would also bite at their flesh. So this may be the result of fearmongering and gossip, and it would certainly add
Right,
fuel
okay,
to the
okay.
vampire rumours. So yeah, she was doing this for like
That's
20 odd
funny, though,
years.
because vampires aren't interested in flesh. So that's funny.
Yeah, because it's all about the blood, isn't it? But I don't know if it was just a way to get at the blood. It's like she's got those fangs
Straight from
for
the source.
piercing skin, right along the jugular. It's like, look, just tear a chunk off and it'll bleed. I can drink it. But yeah, so in the early 1600s, word of Bathory's extracurricular activities began to spread throughout the kingdom, and they came to the attention of a Lutheran minister who complained about her publicly, sorry, don't know what happened there, and to the court in Vienna. And the king was like, yo, this is nuts. I can't pretend this isn't happening. I need to at least look into it, just to confirm whether this is actually happening or not. This is a direct quote from what the king actually said. Yeah,
Really?
that's word for word what he actually said. He was really ahead of the times when it came to linguistics. So, yeah, he ordered evidence begun to be collected, and by 1611, the testimony that was collected was that of 300 witnesses. Some who claimed to have seen burnt corpses with flesh missing from their faces as though torn away by teeth, or have been complicit in the burial of young girls in unmarked graves within the castle walls. So that's a lot. 300 witness testimonies. I mean, on one hand,
She is a shy killer.
well, exactly. Because on the one hand, it's like, how are all of these witnesses? But then on the other hand, it's like, look, is this actually first-hand accounts?
Right.
Is this all hearsay and rumours? What, they didn't have TV back then. What else are they supposed to do?
Yeah, but 660 victims, like, that's very difficult to get away with. 600, I don't even know 660
I mean,
people.
because you've got to think, like, a lot of them were going to be servant girls and things. It's going to be one of these things of like, look, we have no
Yeah.
money, toddle off and get a job, and I'm never going to hear from you again because that's just the way things are. Because we have to send letters by horse, and there's wars going on, and I'm just going to send you off and hope that you've lived a good and happy life. These poor peasant girls
Yeah,
and things.
okay.
Like,
Yeah.
on one hand,
Some
it's
of them, but some
feasible,
of
but
them
on the
were.
other, exactly, like these children of lesser gentry, like, you would have thought people would be out looking for them. But
Yeah.
unless it was one of these things where it's like, oh, sorry, she died. She fell from a horse. She ate bad meat. She flung herself from the top of the highest tower. I don't know. Who knows? That's not something that
Yeah.
I've really... It's not something I've really come across when I've been
That's
reading
interesting.
about this, which is very interesting because we're at all. But again, sort of something I'm going to touch upon in a moment. Because again, it's said upon her arrest that Bathory was caught red-handed, literally covered in the blood of a young girl she was torturing. However, this is likely fantastic embellishment because there's not actually any evidence to support it.
Yeah.
2 trials were held to convict Bathory before she was confined to her
2.
castle. Yeah, don't know why, but 2, from what I've read. 2 trials within like a month of each other as well. I don't know if it was like new evidence came to light or these witnesses started crawling out the woodwork. Who knows? But two trials, confined to her castle. 4 of her servants were executed as accomplices, but as ever, position grants power, which saved Bathory's life. It was originally thought she would be sent to a nunnery, but as more and more came out about her crimes, it was decided she should just be kept under house arrest. She was free to move within the castle, but she wasn't allowed to leave it. Which kind of isn't really the best sentence ever anyway, because the castle was where she was murdering everybody anyway. She didn't need to be
Yeah.
able to leave it to kill people.
Yeah. And why would you send her to a nunnery? Why would you send her to a place of women?
Yeah,
when she's killing women for
Exactly.
their blood. You're gonna kill all the
Hmm.
nuns?
Send her to
Fuck's sake.
a monk
The non
place.
virgins. Like, what? It's exactly what she wants.
Yeah.
It's like it's her ideal victim.
Yeah, somebody
Why
must
was
have
it ever
pointed
on the
that out.
table?
Must have been like, oh yeah, bad woman, we'll send her to a nunnery, that'll sort her out. And someone clearly must have been sitting there like,
Someone just passed
guys.
someone a note,
Yeah,
like
like,
real slick, like not the
yeah,
nuns.
virgins all in the same house. Really a good idea? Mm. So,
Well, I haven't stopped thinking about it, like bathing in the blood of virgins, but I'm telling you, like there must be at least 5 virgins per bathtub, so someone was having to help her.
oh well, yeah,
Had to be because what?
definitely.
How you disposing of 5 bodies? Like who's keeping the blood warm?
And I mean, that's the thing, if you are in a position where you're some poor servant girl in the house of a woman of such high rank and nobility, and she says, do this, how dare you say no?
Yeah, especially if she's murdering servant girls, I'd be like, the
Yeah.
fuck yeah, I'll do
Like,
it.
where
Yeah,
else
go
are
on.
you
Yeah, go
meant
on.
to go? What are you supposed to do? And then next thing you know, like, you just, it's happening, you're in too deep, or, you think, she's Elizabeth Bathory, Countess, she's gonna get away with it. Grand. And
Yeah,
then you go get executed while she gets just
yeah,
continue
and then
living
you're
in that
swinging
castle.
anyway.
Exactly. Like,
Fucking hell.
yeah, so she actually died. I was going to say she was
Good.
quite young. You'd say good.
Yeah.
I mean, I hope she's dead. It was a long ass time ago. But yeah, she died at the age of 54.
She's a vampire.
This is it.
They
This is
undead.
it. She died, we'll say in quotation marks, at the age of 54, but the location of her body is unknown. It is said she was originally buried in the local church grounds, but uproar from the villagers had her body moved to the family crypt in her ancestral hometown. But nobody actually knows where it is. No body, no death. Bitch is still out there.
Yeah,
You know?
bitch is still out
Um,
there.
but also, we love a good, messy murder story, particularly those with vampiric undertones, which apparently are the real inspiration for Bram Stoker's Dracula. Because, you've got a blood-drinking countess from Hungary, as opposed to a Romanian head-impaling prince,
Hmm.
you know. But whilst we do love these stories, we like to play devil's advocate here on Hell Hath No Fury.
As
We
always.
do. So, as ever, there are contradictions and such to be considered when it comes to Elizabeth Bathory. Some have argued for her innocence, claiming she was the victim of a conspiracy, which was highly politically motivated due to her status and wealth, which only escalated after her husband's death. I've just realised I haven't even said when her husband died. My apologies. He obviously did die before her. I'll tell you when, in a moment, once I find it in my notes. He died in 1604. There we go. 1604. So not an awful lot of time before she did, to be fair. But yeah, so he died first, and her position didn't wane at all. If anything, she grew more powerful after her husband's death. She'd loaned out money to people that hadn't been repaid, and this debt was cancelled after her death, and fully enough people who were in debt to her, just happened to be her accusers, Very
Oh, of
convenient.
course.
Very convenient. And apparently, as I've sort of touched upon, physical evidence was exaggerated. Whilst bodies of girls were found within the walls of the castle, it's argued that these findings were grossly over exaggerated because disgrace and Bathory would advance the political status of her accusers. There's also the addition of religious undertones. I believe she was Lutheran. Honestly, when it comes to all the different Christian denominations, I am pretty clueless, like, I'm not gonna lie. And there was a sweeping change in obviously Protestants.
Yeah,
sweeping
sure. I think
across
that's your
Europe.
lad's fault,
Oh
not
yeah,
ours anyway.
100%. That's what Henry's fault, isn't it? Dickhead. So you had that sweeping across Europe. So that was a big thing at the time as well. But as always, unfortunately, as with most of the women that we do discuss, we may never know the truth. Centuries have passed since the Blood Countess committed her supposed crimes, and her name became infamous as a vampiric murderer, spawning numerous stories and a really shit noughties film about a video game that I only watched recently that was one of
No,
the
what is
worst
it?
and best things I've ever seen in my entire life, and I can't remember the name of it. Was it on Netflix? It was so bad. Like, it was really. It had Frankie Muniz in it, and her from One Tree Hill, and her, the really annoying one from the OC. Oh, it was like about a video game that like had her in it, and she was like trying to. If you died in the game, you died in real life, and it was because she was like
Okay.
claiming your youth or your life force or whatever, and it was just
Oh Christ.
it
Okay.
was horrific. I'll try and remember what it was called, but I did try and wipe a lot of it from my brain because what
Which is
a,
fair and
you know,
understandable. Yeah.
waste of space in my brain, really. Um, so yes, that is the Blood Countess, prolific serial killer or vampire. Considering there's no body,
Or neither.
well, on neither.
Or
Yeah, victim
victim.
as ever. Victim. We talk about these women
And to
every
be
week,
fair,
and half the
yeah,
time, it is very likely that they themselves were victims of something much larger than them.
the volume. I just have trouble understanding how the volume of girls didn't go investigated. Like it's not as if all of them
Yeah, she was actually only
were nothing.
convicted of 80 murders.
Only
Yeah,
80.
only 80.
Like higher than all of the serial killers
Yeah,
today.
yeah.
I know it's harder to be a serial killer today, but like at the same
I know
time,
it is quite fantastical, really, isn't it? It's just,
it's huge. There's definitely some embellishment going on there.
oh, definitely.
As I mean, look, it's so long ago.
Yeah, we'll never know. You know,
We'll never
we'll
know.
never know, which is always the
It is
sad
very
truth.
interesting though,
Oh,
yeah.
100%, 100%. Like, I just think that that's such a crazy story, really. Like, it is. It's mad to think that she actually did this and bathed in people's blood and all this. To be honest, I think a lot of it's nonsense. I personally think a lot of it
Yeah.
is nonsense. And it's probably been embellished upon and exaggerated over the centuries as well. Because, people have been writing about her ever since because, it's a good story. And I think a
Yeah.
lot of the facts have been mixed up with fiction, personally.
I think a lot of the themes that popped up in yours are also going to pop up in mine. I think I will go ahead and read out my story, the first one, the most important one, I think.
Excellent.
And then I've got a few smaller ones that I can use to like back up the things that I believe
Great.
selectively.
Great. Yes, selectively.
It's confirmation bias.
It's fine. It's not like, we're a podcast. Who gives a shit?
Yeah, who cares? No one's. It's three people
Yeah,
listening.
this is literally just us having the crack because we enjoy talking
Yeah.
about shit like this.
Okay, so I found so many stories this week that I wanted to talk about, but like this one that I found just fit the bill so well. And it's a bit heartbreaking as well, so I think it's probably on theme for last week as well. So this is the story of the Dearg Julie or the Dearg Jua. I've seen both. One of them makes more sense and is a closer translation to what I think it should be, and I think one of them has just been bastardized over time by probably Americans. But I'll we'll go on anyway. I'll just continue.
Indeed.
Okay, so I've read so many versions of the story over the past week. I'm just going to piece them all together in the way that I like the best because that's kind of what myths do. Myths and
Yeah,
legends, they kind of just evolve over
of
time.
course. I'm totally here for
So,
that.
yeah. So there was once a young woman. She lived in Waterford, which is just kind of southeast of the
Yeah, it's
country.
like Cork type of. Is it County Cork?
Cork is very bottom,
Yeah.
so we're going to be up and to the right a little bit.
Okay. Cool.
She was more beautiful than you can ever imagine. She was indescribably beautiful. She had porcelain skin, fiery red hair, rouge lips. She was sought after far and wide. She was a vision.
Can I just interrupt for just a second? Because in all
Yeah.
of these stories from times gone by about these beautiful women, they always have this pale as shit skin and these like bright red lips, and it's like, think about that in real life for a second. Think about how terrifying that actually looked. Like, I've literally just pictured her in my mind, and she just looks like a banshee. Like, that is not a good look. I'm sorry, girl, but like, go out in the sun, get some vitamin D.
There is no sun. It's Ireland. She's covered in clouds for her whole
Boy,
life.
I don't know, do something.
I do not do something. Anyway, we've got our pale beauty here.
Alright, I'll leave her alone.
um, So she can't do anything about it. It's hard to get a tan over here.
Fine.
So everyone wanted to marry her. Everyone far and wide came to seek her hand in marriage. And she rebuffed all of these attempts. She wasn't interested. To her, it didn't matter. She didn't want to marry just anyone. She was in love, but she was in love with the wrong person.
Of course she was.
Of course she was.
Naturally.
A farmhand peasant
A
boy.
farmhand peasant boy. Oh, classic. I bet he was an absolute ride.
Actually, he was, yeah. Actually, he knew his way around a horse. Uh, she wasn't of very high station herself. She didn't have much in the way of riches or land. Her family were getting by, but they weren't well to do. But God forbid they let her marry anyone who was lower than what they already were.
Yeah,
She would not marry below her birth.
of course not. No,
Her
she's got to be climbing
father,
that ladder, hasn't she? That's her job
yeah, she has
as
to,
the
yeah,
daughter. Marry up.
absolutely, yeah. And her father, when she was, when he, I don't know, she was obviously born and she was beautiful, but when he kind of seen her grow into her beauty, he was like over the moon because it meant that was something that he could barter, pretty
Of
much.
course.
So after getting wind of what was going on, the farmhand and her were planning to get married. See, he accepted the next offer for her hand. In fact, he actually went to seek someone who was intrigued. So he went to the most, I think it was the closest chieftain to them, and yeah, the chieftain was looking, and yeah, the chieftain was interested, and it wasn't a bad offer. If a chieftain came knocking, like, you're not going to say no. It was someone who had status and power and a huge dowry, and he wouldn't only set the young woman up for life, but also the whole family. They would buy land and provide for generations on his generous dowry, and the family would be doused in riches. All they had to do was lose her. And so they sent her along to be wed to the wealthy man. She was devastated, absolutely horrified that this was happening to her. How could the people that she loved most in life be complicit in this act? She begged and pleaded and tried to negotiate, but neither her father or her betrothed would be moved. Um, Her love vowed that he would find her and steal her away, and they would be together forever. Uh, but she had no choice. So she went with the man to his house and played at being his wife. At her wedding, everyone was invited to the wedding. The whole village was invited. Everyone had a great time except for her. She sat in the corner and cried because everything that was happening to her was just not what she wanted. She, in her head, cursed her father for doing this to her, taking away her love, taking away her life. That was it for her.
This is so sad.
So
Like, already, I'm
it's very sad.
absolutely heartbroken
It's
for
very
this girl.
sad. So she went away to the horrible man's house. He was an atrocious person. He was just evil. He turned out to be far more abusive than anyone had known. And he was concerned with nothing but her beauty, not her comfort or her happiness, just that she would look pretty for him. She was just a trophy, and he locked her away and made it so that he and he alone would enjoy her. Never again would someone look upon her beauty because he owned that. But she held out hope for a couple of years. She held out hope that her love would come and find her, break her from the prison, set her free, and they would run away and find all the life that they should have had. And this is kind of what got her through her darkest moments, just that hope. But as time wore on, so did the hope, and with each passing day, no one come to save her. This last light inside of her dwindled. Her husband exacted cruel pleasure from her torment. He would visit her daily, locked away as she was, and perform his favourite act. He would take a knife and cut her beautiful pale skin so that no one could, or so that he could watch the red blood drip down her flesh. This was his favourite thing to do with her.
That is. See, when you first said, doing his favourite thing to her, I obviously thought, bad
Yeah,
chicken, wow, wow. But in a really gross, horrible, we don't like that, we don't approve of that, consent is very important kind of way. Not like cutting her just to watch her bleed. Like,
he just loved to watch her bleed.
that is vile. That is
He was a
disgusting.
bastard.
Yeah, he
He's a
sounds
cruel
it.
man.
Disgusting behaviour.
Yeah, so she was at her wit's end and she took back control in the only way that was available to her. She just refused to eat. So her beauty began to dwindle, her hair became dry and brittle, her complexion lost its vibrancy, her rouge lips paled, and she became emaciated. The husband, fearing now the loss of his most beautiful prize, tried to force her to eat. He could force the food into her mouth, but no matter how hard he tried, he couldn't force her to swallow it in the end. So weeks turned into months and she wasted away until finally her body caught up with her spirit and she died.
Oh my word. That's
hmm
awful.
Terrible. So, for all the riches of her chieftain husband, her burial was shamefully modest. Hardly anyone grieved. No one knew her anymore. Her family were all still off enjoying their lavish life. Her husband was busy with his new wife that he took before her body was even cold. The man just didn't give a fuck. There was nothing in it for him. There wasn't, once her beauty was gone, there was nothing there for him.
Oh
So,
god, I'm outraged, honestly. Like, I know that you
yeah, I'm
you can see
fuming.
my face, the people who are listening can't. Oh, my word. It's an angry
Only
face.
one
It's an
person
angry face,
grieved.
guys.
It's an angry face. It is. Only one person grieved, and that was her love from before the
Stop!
marriage. He
Oh
visited her
no!
grave
Oh.
every day and lamented her loss. He
Ugh.
wished for her back. He wished he could do things differently. He was sad. He was devastated. He just wanted his love back. But this is not what brought her back. Her spirit, so filled with rage and unrest at her cruel fate, forced her out of the grave and set her on a path of vengeance as the Dearg.
Yes, this is what we're here for.
She made her way first to her father's new land, his home, his huge new home that her dairy had bought him. She crept through the house, quiet as a mouse, fury sizzling within her, and killed him where he slept. She sucked the life from his lips, I believe.
Good girl.
Yep. Next, she made her way to the home of her husband, the great and brutal chieftain who had brutalized her. Some say it was here that she found him already brutalizing his new wife in the same way, and some say the new wife was already dead when she arrived. Some say she found him in bed with numerous other women. Whichever way, it doesn't matter, her fury intensified and she launched herself at the man, killing him and sucking every drop of blood from his body.
Good girl.
His blood invigorated her starved body, and she felt more alive than she had in years, more energized than she could ever remember, and it could not be quenched. She gave over to this hunger and let it consume her. She became its slave. With her beauty restored, she would lure young men into the darkness and drink greedily of their blood. But this soon obviously caught the attention of the villagers, and they locked her away in a very deep grave and placed a stone on top, or several stones on top, because this was the only way to keep her in the actual grave.
Yeah.
Um, but her rage is such that on one night, and one night only, it's strong enough that she could perhaps rise, and that is the anniversary of her wedding. Sometimes the rocks are moved during the year, say, and she's able to wiggle out. And she comes out and devours men from the town or the village or for anywhere. Who knows where she could be?
Oh
And
my.
sometimes the rocks are in place. She was buried under the tree of Strongbow, but in time this grave has been lost. We don't know where it is now. Who knows where it could be? Some say maybe a building site is on top of it or a development prospect and she can never be released from it, but who knows? Maybe that could be knocked down sometime.
Well, yeah,
She might
exactly.
rise again.
You never know there are all these buildings that rise and fall, and land is sold and reclaimed, and different things done with it. If we don't have those
Mm,
stones, we're gonna have an awful lot
we
of
don't know.
dry boys out there. Oh
That's
my, I
her.
love
That's
that.
the right. So she's one of the vampire legends that I read from like mythology. So that's probably one of the things that may have inspired Bram Stoker,
Yes.
because
Oh,
I think he was read these stories as a child by his mother, these horror
hmm,
stories.
that
Um,
makes a lot of sense.
yeah, and then also he was. So there's another legend. It's not like female centric or anything, but it's Irish mythology again. It's called the Avertok, which is basically he was a chieftain. He was a brutal chieftain, a bad guy
Hmm.
basically, and he was eventually murdered in a coup, but rose again the very next day and start asking for blood tributes from his villagers. So this happened a few times. Like a hero was called upon. Some say it was Fionn McCool, but probably not. Um, and he had to keep slaying him, and then he would rise again and slay him and rise again and slay him and rise again, and eventually they just asked for help from like a magic man who said, "Okay, you have to bind him, bury him upright, put him under a rock, and the rock still exists.
Oh.
I think it's in Donegal, the rock, and it's beside a hawthorn thorn tree. There's like pictures of it online. It's pretty
Oh,
cool.
I love that. That's very cool. Like, I love stuff like that. I
Yeah,
love all these stories where, because, within every myth and legend, there is a grain of truth, and
yeah,
on one hand, I find it kind of sad that we don't know the truth exactly.
yeah,
'Cause I feel like on one hand, it kind of does them a disservice, but at the same time, I always like to think, the less logical side of me
yeah.
always likes to think
The
the myth is
fanciful
the
is more
truth.
interesting.
Yeah, you know?
Yeah, I love the fanciful because it's just like, okay, there's maybe something like maybe that she was really angry and she killed somebody, but now it's like, no, she devoured their blood and she
Exactly.
rises again and devours their blood.
Exactly.
And there was also one more story that I thought was interesting,
Tell me.
which is probably inspired by your story.
Oh, okay.
So before Dracula, 26 years before Dracula, or well, yeah, so before Bram Stoker wrote Dracula, there was a writer who I'm just gonna grab it now so I get his name right.
I think I know. I think I know what you're gonna say. Actually.
Do you? Yeah. So this guy, I think his name is Sheridan Le Fanu, wrote an Irish guy,
Mhm.
wrote Carmilla,
Yes, this definitely rings a bell.
which is fascinating. And I think it's actually been adapted into a TV series these days, but not like, but with different kind of personalities or something. So Carmilla was a vampire novel written by Sheridan Le Fanu in 1897, 26 years, as I said, before Dracula, about lesbian vampires.
Yes, this
Well, sorry,
definitely
one
sounds
lesbian
familiar.
vampire.
This definitely. I feel like I'm gonna have to Google this because I feel like I have read this somewhere.
Yeah, I read it today. But it's like I just found that fascinating because vampires, especially now, are very synonymous with like queer culture, and I
Mm.
thought it was really funny that that had started in 1897 with a lesbian vampire. Like, who the fuck told this guy to write about lesbians?
Yeah, like that's just again just ahead of his time, really, isn't he?
Yeah, maybe. Yeah.
Um, 'Cause there was another vampire story as well, and I can't off the top of my head think who wrote it. But again, I'm sure it was before Dracula. Um, Let me have a quick Google. Because it was like, that's it, 1819. It's called The Vampire, a short work of prose fiction written in 1819 by John William Polidori. Um, and I'm sure they said that it was like a thinly veiled dig at Lord Byron. He was like sort of the inspiration for these suave sort of vampires who like sucked blood. Um, I thought that was really interesting when I stumbled upon that because he wrote about vampires as well, I'm sure. And then this guy like kind of took the piss, I think, and based like a vampire on Lord Byron. I don't know. I can't remember all the details, but I always thought that was funny. That's hilarious. Like,
It is funny, isn't it? So maybe what I was thinking, just when you mentioned yours, I was thinking maybe the lesbian aspect came from your one only wanting to drink girls'
yeah,
blood.
yeah. Because surely the blood of anybody younger would
Yeah.
work in the same way with the whole epilepsy thing. The blood of a non-sufferer would heal the sufferer. Surely the
Yeah.
blood of the youth would rejuvenate the old. Surely it shouldn't
Mm.
matter what gender they are or what sex they
No,
are. Um,
exactly, yeah.
so yeah, that's actually a very good point. Because
In the
why?
book, in the book it says something that you also said, which was that the girls from the surrounding villages were disappearing.
Yeah.
And that's what happened in the book, and I was like, "Oh my God, it's all
It would
connected."
not
So you
surprise me
could
if it
go.
was.
Another thing I found really interesting was that when I was looking at this and I was going so far back into like Celtic mythology to find vampires, I was like, "That's fucking crazy. That's old as fuck."
Hmm.
So I was like, "How many other cultures have references to vampires
Yeah.
from so long ago?" So I had a look. So I have the Wikipedia article here. and it's everywhere. Mesopotamia, ancient Greece, ancient India, Jewish traditions, Albania, Greece, Hungary, Iceland, Romania, Ireland and Scotland, Slavic Europe, Spain, Africa, the Americas, Asia, folktales. Like it's everywhere.
Literally everywhere.
How do all of these separate cultures have references to
Hmm.
this?
It's
It's
one of those
so
things where
crazy.
your classic like monster movie monsters, like vampires, werewolves, zombies. It's like every single culture in the world references these like mythological creatures, and it's one of those things of like these cultures that hadn't even met yet when you go so far
Yeah.
back. Like, because there was one that I was looking at that was from ancient Greece, and you know that was a hell of a long time ago, and they had references to um like a really famous like female vampire, and it's just like, do I believe? You know, that's what it always comes down to.
Yeah, where it kind
Do
of
I
pushes you.
believe? You know?
I don't know. I mean, I don't obviously I don't believe that vampires exist,
No.
but like there is something in it. There has to be like something in people thinking all across the world over that this blood is something that will sustain them and
Yeah,
that there's something so precious about the blood that you'd have to be a monster to crave it from someone else.
it's so
Do you know, like
bizarre.
that's so interesting. And then it's also really interesting that women get a fair shout in these stories. This is not a story like dominated by men. Like vampire stories are dominated by women.
Yeah, like you might have
Like
Dracula,
predominantly.
but
It's one
it's
story.
one story. Exactly. There are a lot of women
It's
out
just
there
a
who
very
get credit.
famous one.
Exactly. But
Like, and if you go back before Dracula, like you can see the domination of females in it.
oh
Like you've
yeah,
got Carmilla, that lesbian story, your lesbian story. Well, not maybe yours wasn't like a lesbian story, but like I thought about
definitely
it as
has
a
some
lesbian story.
undertones.
Maybe, yeah, totally. But Carmilla definitely has undertones. And then we've got the Dearg, which was about female suffering. Essentially, that's just like that's a if that's like a mythological story, it's basically telling you to not treat women like shit because
Yeah,
it'll come back and bite you.
exactly. There's a lesson, isn't there? And I mean, like I was saying with ancient Greece, I'm sure she was called the Lamia or something, and she feasted on blood by transforming into a young woman. And again, it was a seducing men thing.
Yeah,
She would seduce these men, and then once they fell, it's sort of like a, is it the succubus that's the female, or is it the incubus
yeah,
that's the
succubus,
female?
incubus,
Yeah,
male.
yeah, succubus female. It's like the succubus myth, but it's not. She had her own name and her own identity, and then you've got probably succubus sort of like born out of that, and there's very female heavy, which is always nice.
Very interesting. And I wonder maybe was it a weapon for women? Like maybe women began these legends and they were like, okay, well this is how we get them back. Like we have to play on their superstitions or whatever. Like so treat your wife like shit and like maybe she will come back and kill you.
Yeah, like definitely, you know, because again, a lot of these old stories and myths and things, they were designed to be lessons, weren't they?
Yeah.
Even like fairy tales, you know, like Brothers Grimm, there was always a message behind those, and a
Mm-hmm.
lesson to be learned, or a moral. So I think that's probably very likely.
Yeah. I love that. I love that they're using like stories and storytelling as weapons.
Yeah, if only we could do that now, eh? It's like, but don't you touch me, I'm a vampire, I'm gonna touch your blood.
Yeah,
Just like,
right.
alright, okay, hon, you do that. Fuck. And I feel like because it is something that has been around for so long and in the sort of the collective psyche for so long, that there are so many different branches
Yeah.
that come off this sort of vampire idea, that there are so many different directions that you can take, and even within, probably even within, like the UK and Ireland, you know, very small places, um, but that have such distinct individual cultures within them,
Yeah.
you know, from
And
like
very old
way gone,
cultures.
yeah, exactly, very old. And then especially when you think of places like, you know, England in particular, having been invaded by so many different cultures, you know, say Romans, Vikings, and Normans. What did they bring with them? Oh, and the Saxons as well, actually. That's four different peoples off the top of my head. What did they bring with them when they came to England? How did that then intertwine with the original Celtic people that were here? What stories then spanned out of that? Like,
Hmm.
there's probably so much that we could find.
We have a very rich history and it's really interesting when you look at our like folklore and fairy tales. Like we have different cycles and the different cycles are um influenced by the different people who were invading us at the time. So obviously we had the
Yeah.
Celts as well. We had the people before the Celts. We had the Celts, and then we had the Vikings. We had a few more people, but like in and around the Celt time is when that really exploded. And then we have like the fairies, the fairy people, the fairy
Yeah.
folk, which is my favorite. I find
Fairies,
that so
fairies are
fascinating.
terrifying.
You
I
do
find the
not
fairies
mess with the
absolutely terrifying.
fae.
You do not mess with the fairies. Hell
Don't
no.
mess with the fae.
No, I don't even want to talk about them.
I
I
don't
don't want
even
to
want.
like
Yeah.
tempt them. Like,
No, I specifically picked something tonight that was not Fae because the Dearg duo is not has never been like was once human, so was not Fae. Whereas the Fae have never been human. I don't want to tempt them.
no, I don't even. I don't want to give them any ideas. I don't want it to seem like I'm challenging them or anything.
No, and I'm
Like,
not. And I'm not. I'm not.
there's far too much like particularly where I live at the minute, because obviously I grew up in a new town, so the village that I live in at the minute being over 1,000 years old, I'm just like, I dread to think what could have happened on this very ground that I live on.
You are
You know, I
standing
don't
on
want
the
to go and
bones
tempt
of people.
anything.
You and I used
Oh,
to live in
100%.
Edinburgh, and we know for a fact we lived on
Oh,
people's
yeah.
bones. Like that
Yeah.
city's just been built on top of each other for fucking
Hundred
thousands of
percent,
years.
100%. I mean, we'd go out on the piss and we'd be literally walking over unmarked graves.
Yeah.
You know, like the Royal Mile was just full of bodies.
Yeah, totally.
Like,
And like,
you
sure,
know,
we used to go to clubs that were in those what you call them?
the
The
vaults.
vaults. Yeah, we used to go to,
Yeah,
like that were just like scraped out vaults. Like
yeah.
that's where we
Like,
used to
oh,
go to parties.
where people used to be like literally like brothels and murders and oh, I just that
No wonder
one of
we're
my
like
favorite.
this.
I know one of my favorite ghost stories of all time comes from when I went on a ghost tour in the vaults, and the story that the we don't really have time for it tonight. Maybe another time. Should have done it last week. Really, my favorite ghost story of all time was told when I was on my ghost tour in the vaults, and it was so just like a casual thing that he just remembered. He was either a very good actor or it was like a casual thing that he remembered because you know it had to do with the clubs that we used to go to that were literally right above these vaults that I was in, and I just yeah, Edinburgh is so haunted, so
So
haunted.
haunted. So
To be honest, I
haunted.
think the entirety of the UK and Ireland are haunted
Yeah.
AF. Like most of you, to be fair, everywhere in the world will be because it's all been inhabited by someone at some point. But
Yeah.
like, you know, when you think of the really bloody history, and you know,
Brutal.
yeah, like with all the invasions, you know, the ones that we had on us and then the ones that
You had
we
on
did
us.
to other people. Exactly. I was like waiting for you to say that. Like, you know, there's gotta be like I mean I'm adamant my house is haunted. You know, I've definitely seen things in my house,
Yeah.
and it could be anything. Because as I say, who knows what this house is actually built on? You know.
That's true. And you know what? Like, I often think like things. Sometimes I hear things and I'm like, I've let that pass over me. I'm like, that hasn't bothered me. But sometimes, like, I listened to a podcast. I've been listening to this podcast nonstop. It's called Scared to Death. It's fucking
Oh
creepy as
yes.
shit. I swear to God. And the things that I've been hearing that usually would roll off my back, I'm like, is that a
Yeah.
demon?
Like
Is that a
yeah.
ghost?
That's the kind of thing that I have to listen to in the car on the way to work in the morning. So I have all day to try and forget about it
Yeah.
because you know, I
It's
come home and I have to sleep with a light on or something because I'm
yeah.
just like, what is that?
It's so hard. Like my girlfriend went home down like the country a couple of weekends ago, and I literally went and stayed in my parents' house because I was scared as fuck to stay on my own. It was because I was scared to death.
Oh, no, like to be fair, the last time I had this place to myself, because you know, I still live with my parents because I'm an overgrown child. It was like the first time I'd stayed here alone for a very long time because of COVID and everything. And even then I had the dog. I don't have a dog anymore. So I'm like completely alone in this decent sized house. It's always making horrible noises and I'm certain I'm seeing things. And like that first night I was here by myself when they were away in September, I was just like, I was so creeped out. I was so terrified. I was like, I'm seeing things. And I'm always adamant it's a trick of the light or whatever, you know. It's especially when I'm walking down the stairs or walking up the stairs. I swear I can see something through the banisters. Like, I always feel like I can see this dark shape through the banisters. And I know it's just me. I know it's just me.
Uh-huh.
But
Maybe.
maybe it's not. Because
Maybe.
it's always in the hallway where it's in the hallway where me and my brother have seen the same apparition on different times. And like when I first stayed here by myself, I was just so fucking creeped out. So creeped out. But like they were gone for like a whole week. They were gone for like 10 days or something actually. So by the end of it, I was like, yes, it's fine. I'm friends with the ghosts.
Just
But
chilling with them.
yeah, I mean they've not hurt me. I don't feel any sort of when I first moved here, when I first moved back in here, I used to feel a horrible, horrible unease in my bedroom.
Yeah. Sage.
In that corner, right
You
there.
won't even look at it.
I'm not even gonna look at it. I have to look at it and make sure there's nothing there. Like I'd be in bed at night and it's like I was adamant there was a woman sitting in that corner. I was
No,
adamant there
no,
was a woman,
no,
and she
no.
was angry. She was really pissed off. She was like, "Who the fuck are you?" But then like after time, like that eased off and it went away, and I was like, "She must be okay with me now."
Yeah.
But even still, on a night, my eyes are just drawn to that corner.
You have sage in your room as well, though. Like
I do,
you've
yeah.
made your space like a positive space to be in.
Yeah, it's very positive. I try and good vibes only in here, and
Yeah.
yeah, I sage it, and I do all me trippy shit and manifestations and affirmations and praying to Jeebus and stuff.
Oh, keep safe. Keep safe.
Oh yeah, for real.
Will we grab the thing that we didn't do last week?
Yes,
The lucky dip.
yes, the
Two
lucky
seconds.
dip. I couldn't even think what it was called. The thing we didn't do last
The
week.
thing we didn't do last week.
That's a good enough name for me. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. Let's see what we've got.
In the meantime, please follow us on social media at Hell Hath No Fury Pod on Instagram and at Pod Hell Hath on Twitter. If you are engaging with us on either platform in the DMs, you'll probably find Elle on Instagram and I'll be taking the Twitter, but we do kind of move around also.
Yeah, it's not like exclusive. It's more who isn't at work when and is actually free to do things because
Yeah,
we don't get to do this all the time. We are a slave to the man
we
at
are
the end
slave
of
to
the
the
day.
capitalism. We do,
Yeah, slave to that capitalist agenda. Bloody
bastards.
Tories.
It came up with plain old murderer.
Oh, lovely. You
That's
can't go wrong
Can't
with
go
a
wrong with
plain
a
old
pen.
murderer.
No. So that's I have in the list. I have murderer and serial murderer down. So if we go murderer,
Interesting.
are we talking can only do one murder?
I think that could actually be. It could be limiting, but it could also be very interesting.
Okay.
You know, a really because there probably will be some very insane, brutal, one-off murders that very juicy. I mean, there's one in the media at the minute, not a woman, but I don't know if you've seen the man who his daughter was apparently sold into a sex trafficking ring, apparently by her boyfriend.
What?
Dad went up. This is in America. Dad went up to Seattle and rescued her. It was pure taken.
Taken.
He went up to Seattle and rescued her, brought her home. At which point she alleged that the boyfriend had something to do with it. Dad drove to boyfriend's house, kidnapped him, put in the back of his trunk, drove off, hit him in the head with a cinder block, and then stabbed him to death. Threw him in the back of the trunk and just abandoned the car. And it's like one-off murder, absolutely no priors whatsoever, no sort of record at all. But apparently, this guy, I've only read the one article on it because I only heard about it today. But yeah, apparently this guy sold his daughter into sex trafficking, so he found him and he killed him.
Send me that article, will you?
Oh hell yeah, yeah. It's like again stuff like that, just that one-off thing where it's like, holy shit, as if that actually happened. You
Yeah.
know?
Okay. This could be good then, right? All right. I'm
Yeah,
happy with
yeah.
murder then. Not happy with murder, obviously. You don't know. You all know what I mean. Just fuck off. Well, thanks for joining us. We had a great
Yes, as
time.
always.
This was one of
Yeah.
my favorite weeks. I love when I can get mythology into something like that's my favorite.
Defo. Yes, so thank you for joining us. I hope you enjoyed our stories this week. As ever, if you do have any suggestions or feedback, please let us know by getting through to us on Instagram or Twitter.
Absolutely. And once again, thank you to our fabulous producer, Anya, at Anya Byrne Communications. Honestly, we couldn't do it without her. She spends hours editing our ridiculous stuff into an actual show, which I honestly am in awe of
Oh
completely.
yeah, I don't know how she does it. She also puts up with our terrible crack on WhatsApp in the group chat. So,
Yeah. If
she
you are
deserves a
looking,
medal alone for that.
oh, absolutely, yeah. If you are looking to start a podcast, look no further. She is your all-in-one stop shop to a fabulous pod.
She's legit an actual G. Like
An
an
actual
actual
G.
G. Yeah.
Thank you guys. I'll see you next week.
Bye!
Bye.